Coming back from the break, I said that we were going to talk a little bit about religion when we came back, but not the way you think we are. Sometimes on this program, we rant about people in the news or whatnot, but I'm very excited to talk about the woman we have on the show now who has been in the news, but in a great way that we can get behind.
Oh, absolutely. And we're always for, women moving ahead and women doing jobs that traditionally have not been open to them. And so today's conversation is going to be a very exciting one.
Absolutely. So let's bring her in now.
Absolutely.
The first female senior rabbi in Ontario. Please welcome Rabbi Yael Splansky. Whoops, I meant... hit the wrong button.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. And thank you for the invitation.
Now, tell our listeners what it is like being a woman in the rabbinate, because I think, especially if you're not Jewish, the representations you see of rabbis on TV and the movie is always male. What's it like being a woman in a kind of male-dominated world like that?
Well, I would say in my world, it's changing fast, right? So there have been women in the rabbinate for 40 years now. This isn't new. I'm not the first generation of women rabbis. They had to work really hard to break down some barriers. But by the time I arrived, I just walked in the door and got to work. No one blinked when I came to Holy Blossom Temple 16 years ago. So I'm very grateful to that first generation of women rabbis who had to really change the vocabulary. And now I would say this is something new, seeing women in senior rabbinic roles in large congregations. And so for the first time, I'm feeling like there is new work for me to be doing.
You are, like myself, an American who found her way in Canada. Would you say that this is something, having females in the rabbinate, is that more something that was accepted faster in Canada or the U.S.?
So Holy Blossom Temple, my synagogue, brought the first woman rabbi to Canada in 1980. Her name is Joan Friedman. And she went on to be a Talmudic scholar. She's a scholarly kind of rabbi. And I would say she was... The congregation was proud that they were the first to bring a woman rabbi, but it wasn't easy in those early years, for sure. And Toronto's a pretty traditional place. But by now, fast forward to today, I would say, by and large, everyone is thrilled. I've been just overwhelmed with all of the enthusiasm and support and pride, actually, that Holy Blossom is ready for this appointment.
And what does it mean to be a senior rabbi? Because... to be honest, I always just thought there was one level, with just rabbi.
So it depends on the synagogue, right? If you're a big place like we are, then you need a whole clergy team of rabbis and cantors. We've got a lot of good people who we've got to look after, and so that takes time. So in a large congregation with a large staff, there is a senior rabbi who oversees the team. It also means setting an agenda, working with our lay leaders and our board to set the pace for what's next. And at Holy Blossom, that includes a renewal project, which is a major undertaking. So I have roles to play there too.
Has there been any backlash? Have you had, your share of critics or people outraged over it?
I have certainly not heard outrage. I have heard people say, let's see what she's got. Let's see what she can do. And so now it's my turn to show, right? It's enough talking about, and let's just get to work.
Well, what's come up a lot in my readings about you is the term Reform Judaism. And it seems to be that in the part that they call the Reform Judaism, women are much more accepted in the rabbinate. So is that just sort of like a sect of Judaism, or what does that mean?
I would say a stream within Judaism, or a movement, right? There's a whole spectrum. And we're certainly within the mainstream. It is a liberal movement, a mainstream expression of Jewish life that is meant to be relevant in every age. So the Reform Judaism was founded 200 plus years ago in Germany. And the idea then was to make it modern and relevant, to embrace the opportunities of citizenship and what does it mean to be part of the greater society, to break down the ghetto walls, how Jewish law can continue to be interpreted and applied. And in fact, you ask about the role of women. Reform Judaism was really the first to address that question and say it's time to provide equal education for our girls and boys, and even women leaders emerged pretty early on.
Well, and it seems like you have sort of embraced the modern age in terms of, there's sermons on YouTube, and I've read several what seem like blog posts that you've written. Is embracing technology important for religion?
Absolutely. I have been slow to understand that. If my director of communications is listening, he'll be nodding. But I can see now the power of social media, and Jewish life is always about communal life. So you got to go where the people are, whether that's in the center of town or online. So with his help, I'm getting better and better at that.
I think like with a lot of religion, so much of this is a generational thing, whether it be the embracing of technology or just change within religion. Okay, my wife is Jewish, and so when I said to her, we're having the first female senior rabbi on my show, she went, oh, that's kind of, all right, interesting. Whereas her parents and grandparents were more like, really? So I think, with each new generation, religion becomes more, and I don't mean liberal in the political sense, but it becomes broader, it becomes more open-minded, it becomes more susceptible to change and that sort of thing, embracing of cultures. What do you think as far as Judaism goes?
Yes. When I was listening to your story, though, I thought you were pointing out that the generations were not surprised or were surprised.
They were. I mean, her parents were, and her
Uh-huh.
grandparents more so.
Right.
Whereas my wife just went, yeah, that sounds about right.
Right. And that's because this generation now, both men and women, are better at seeing women in roles of authority.
Yeah.
So thank God for that.
And did that take, for the generation that came ahead of you and paved the way, did that take a lot of reinterpretation? Because I am not the most knowledgeable about any religion, but it certainly seems to me that a lot of them, I mean, if you look at Catholicism, women can be priests, and there's many reasons, I guess, for that. Was there a lot of sort of fighting for a new interpretation in order for that path to be made available to women?
So there's what's real according to Jewish law, and then there are the optics, right? And optics and custom and culture are often much more powerful than the limits set by law. And I would say that's what's going on here. So, of course, women can be teachers of Scripture. And we see that in Orthodox circles now, today as well. Of course, women can be communal leaders. We've always had that throughout Jewish history. But can a woman be seen as a figure of authority to interpret Jewish law, to make judgment, quote unquote? All that is changing, but slowly, right? There's the domain of halakha, of law, and there's the domain of communal life and custom. And I would say also that's changing very quickly across the streams within Jewish life. We have now in Montreal a Maharat, who is a teacher of Judaism and absolutely a communal leader at her Orthodox synagogue. She doesn't carry the title rabbi, right? This is a new innovation in Jewish life, this title Maharat, someone who is given a title and a position to be a leading authority, but within the boundaries of Orthodox Jewish law. In Reform Judaism, obviously, it's more open.
We are speaking to Rabbi Yael Splansky, from Holy Blossom Temple. You have said that you see yourself as a rabbi, but you know others see you as a woman. Is it a good thing when everyone just sees you as a rabbi, or is it still important that we separate that? Is it still important to stand out as one of the first female rabbis and the first female senior rabbi?
We can't separate them, right?
Right.
I am who I am.
Right.
Sometimes I hear the word gravitas, right? That the senior rabbi should have gravitas. And I can't help but hear that word as a reference to an older man. Mm-hmm. And so I did say to someone once privately, you know, when I hear that word, I think of an older man, and I will grow older, but I will not become a man. And the question then becomes, how do we reinterpret this word gravitas? Can a woman have gravitas? And I would say, at least in this room, we can all agree yes.
Yeah.
We for sure can. That made me think of a question, which now I have lost.
Well, I'm going to ask you this. What's the biggest challenge when teaching young people nowadays about Judaism? Because what I've said as a non-Jew who's married into it, and we have every holiday, and I go to every dinner, and I try to learn more about it.
Fantastic.
I've said I find it a confusing religion because I say essentially, if you ask me to sum it up, I sum up every Jewish holiday as there were these people, they wanted to wipe us out, they didn't, and now we eat. And we now celebrate the fact that didn't happen. And then the next holiday is there were these people, they wanted to wipe us out, they didn't, and so now we're going to eat and be okay. But besides that, you know, I lose track. It's a lot of different names that I don't pronounce well, and food I don't quite understand. You know, is it like that even just teaching young kids coming up nowadays? Because of the fact that, you know, it's, I think, like I said, every religion gets looser with each younger generation.
So the holidays do have that running theme, I would say.
Oh, good. I'm getting
yes,
it right.
You're,
Okay, good.
You're onto it, for sure. What I would ask you and your wife and your extended family is what's going on at that table,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you're eating together, when you are sharing memories together, when you're making new memories, right? That's Jewish living. So it's not only past tense, right? It is about retelling our stories, but it's also creating new ones. And we've got to focus on the joy in Jewish life and the relevance in Jewish life today. That's what will grab every generation, actually. That's the X factor.
What qualities do you think being a woman brings to being a rabbi? Do you think that there are any sort of skills that are unique to women that enhance their ability to lead?
I'm always careful about speaking in generalizations because, of course, men and women can be good at the same things. There isn't a clear divider along those gender lines, but I would say that by and large, we do want Jewish life to reflect family life. That's always been at the center. And there are often assumptions made about women rabbis that we get family, that we know how to make the synagogue an extension of the home, mm-hmm. that we know how to keep our eyes on the needs of our teenagers, and we know how to create a warm environment that is nurturing for Jewish family life. And certainly not all women have that skill, and certainly many men do. But I would say it is helpful for people to make that assumption about me. I'd like to think their assumption is also correct. But sometimes my phone will ring instead of one of my male colleagues just because people assume that I will speak their language, that I will hear their questions and intuit what they need for their family.
Well, let me ask you, let me ask you this. You've also been the first rabbi to take parental leave.
That's
How
right.
how is that greeted?
Uh-huh. That's so interesting that you learned that. Okay, so here's the thing. People were very open to it. Some people, in fact, felt I should take more time than I did with my first baby. I took 3 months, and I was comparing that to my American girlfriends and sister who got 6 weeks tops, right? So I thought I was doing all right.
Yeah.
But there were some congregants who said I should take longer, right? Because
That's what we do here.
that's right. So it's very interesting with this recent appointment and during the time leading up to it, I had congregants who care very much about me and adore my children. And they would say to me, you know, Rabbi, we think you're amazing and we want you as our senior rabbi. But are you sure you want this for your family? And I know that when they asked that question privately, it was coming from a very loving place and a place of concern. But I also know that if I happen to be a man at the same stage of life with the same 3 boys that I've got, they would never have asked that question.
Yeah.
And it doesn't acknowledge in that question, there isn't yet acknowledgement of my husband's role. He's amazing. He enables me to do what I do. He takes his parenting very seriously. And in that question that those dear congregants would ask, there wasn't yet a recognition that her children would not be neglected if I weren't the one home.
Right.
So in that way, we do have growing to do. And those comments, by the way, did come from an older generation.
Sure.
So I don't think your wife or you would have asked that question.
Well, I'll ask a question that I would also ask of a male rabbi.
Okay.
Okay. We talk about on this program, you know, one of the hard things about being an entertainer and going home is that you're not anymore. You're a person in that house. You're not the person that gets all the attention, the applause or whatnot. You're a husband, you're a wife, whatever. Is it hard going home as a rabbi and now you're a wife and mother? You know, I've asked that of other people, other church leaders or whatnot. You know, you go from the pulpit, let's say, to at home, you're not in charge like that. You're a husband and father, in your case, a wife and mother. Is that difficult at times? Stepping down and stepping back into the house?
Oh, my goodness. That is one of my favorite places to be.
Yeah.
And like in most Jewish homes, when the mother sits at the Shabbat table, she's the queen, right? My boys and my husband, they serenade me at the Shabbat table by the glow of the candles, right? So
my wife does too, on the couch next to our ottoman. She's the queen of that ottoman.
Yeah, my boys are very loving, and my husband is king of my world, that's for sure. So no, that's my favorite place to be. They give me opportunities to be silly and playful in ways that don't always come out in my work. So I really appreciate that. And they know every side of me, right? I should mention, I've grown up in a rabbinic home. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather were all rabbis. So one reason why I went into this good business, I'm sure, is because those rabbis were the same people wherever they went, right? My father is who he is when he's on the dais, when he's at home in his reading chair, when he's apple picking with the grandkids. He is the same person everywhere. And so that's why stepping into this role seemed perfectly natural, that I could just be one person. You play different roles at different times, but you're the same person wherever you go. I think it's the folks who think they have to be different people in different scenarios. Those are the ones who get tripped up.
We have to take a break.
Well, where can people find you online?
At Holy Blossom Temple's website, holyblossom.org. We're there, and with the help of my director of communication, I will get back to you fast.
Great. All right.
And I read several of your writings on reformjudaism.org. So people can find info about you there. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Really, I appreciate it so much.
Come back and say hi again sometime.
I will.
And we'll be right back on Ward Now.